Employee engagement is a very local phenomenon. People leave managers and work teams, not companies. So even if there are a lot of challenges you're facing organizationally today, there's certainly things that each of you can be doing as leaders in your organization to drive engagement, given all the accountability we see at that local unit level. 10, 15 years ago, the word engagement that word sounded so soft. It was a word that people only used in the context of when they were falling in love and getting married. But over time, when you're able to connect the dots with real meaningful business metrics and personal metrics, it starts to gain a lot more credibility and create a much deeper conversation. What we see is that it is possible to quantify that social and economic capital that's created by people and emotions and relationships. The first step, obviously, just sequentially in order, is to get the right person in the right job in the first place. The quality of your manager may be more important than the quality of your physician. We're doing a lot of research recently looking at the physical impact of management on a person. And I don't know how many of you have heard the expression, "my boss is killing me." But there are some studies emerging from both Europe and the United States suggesting that people who have had a bad manager they really dislike for multiple years could be somewhere between 25% if they've worked for them for a short period of time and 38% more susceptible to heart disease and stroke later in life as a product of working for that bad manager. So it's one thing to just talk about employee engagement, but the more we dive into this, it's pretty serious business in terms of the effect you're having on a person's health, well-being, and the family that surrounds that person. So if you're not engaged in your job, you show up at work, things start to go downhill pretty quickly. You might get a little boost if you go for a walk at lunch or go get a bite to eat with a few colleagues. And then things only start to get better it reminds me when I looked at this chart for the first time of being a kid in school again, where you're waiting for the bell to ring at the end of the day, right? That's essentially what a work day looks like for an employee that's not engaged in their job on a day-to-day basis. If you're engaged in your job and you have pretty high level of engagement, it doesn't look much different than any evening or weekend. You pretty much get to go to work and you don't have that deep drop-off for a majority of each day that you're going to work, and it essentially just smooths out the curve a little bit. Basically, the learning from all our work on human talents is that people can't be anything they want to be, but they can be a lot more of who they already are. So if you think about the implications there, how do you continue to invest in areas where people already have strength instead of spending 80% of the time of that performance review we were talking about focusing on their gaps or their areas for improvement and 20% of the time reviewing their victories or strengths? The right answer might be to flip that around. If your manager is essentially not paying attention or ignoring you, there's a 4 in 10 chance you'll be actively disengaged in your job on a day-to-day basis. Things actually get a lot better if your manager is always telling you what you're doing wrong. And then you see only 2 in 10 are actively disengaged in their jobs. If your manager is primarily focusing on your strengths, there's only a 1% chance of being actively disengaged in your job. The lowest item on the activity schedule was time spent cleaning your house. It beat the boss pretty handily. There's a changing dynamic in the workforce today that's only going to accelerate, where employees are joining organizations and saying, I'm going to evaluate what's best for my life and my family and my health and well-being and other aspects. When I'm talking to people who are out there looking for jobs right now, one of the things I always suggest is that they should spend more time getting to know the person who will be their manager than they do looking through the details of the benefits plan. People who have a best friend at work are 7 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs. The praise needs to be individualized, it needs to be as specific as possible, and then as we talked about, it just needs to be deserved and sincere. Great leaders are never well-rounded, but it turns out the best leadership teams do have a well-roundedness of talent.